So when I say I have reframed trauma to see not only the opportunities, but the gifts, I'm 100% serious. I've done it for myself. So one of my biggest traumas that I faced, let me just take a step back and tell it more of as a story. When I was growing up, I was very close to my mother. Um, she had always suffered from bouts of depression, but I wasn't really aware of them as a child. I knew she would get very upset with my dad sometimes, but she was my best friend. We would watch Star Trek Next Generation together. We'd watch Lonesome Dove movie marathons. And we just had an incredibly close bond to the point where, and I didn't recognize it at the time, she would occasionally use that bond against my father. When I reached the teenage years, her personality started to shift. Definitely possible there's some bipolar in there. I know that she was on medication on and off, but she started drinking very heavily, and she started doing drugs. I would find drugs in the house. Saw her buying drugs on one or two occasions, and she decided to divorce my father. That moment was like a catalyst moment for her shift. Now, she'd always been a spiritual woman. She studied Edgar Casey right alongside my father, which is one of the reasons that I found the Edgar Casey Institute as an adult. They used to do yoga and they used to go on retreats, but something happened in that time of her life where she stopped fighting. It felt like she stopped fighting her demons and kind of gave into that side of the journey. She started drinking and doing drugs very heavily, divorced him. And now that he's gone and out of the house, her fear and her just being lost at that time turned into abuse, focused primarily on me as the oldest child. For me, it felt like it happened overnight. I went from having this woman who is all important to me. And yes, there were moments looking back that I realized were indicators that she was suffering from something. All of a sudden, she was not the woman that I loved, and I could not figure out why. She told me she hated me. She told me I was a terrible child. She physically attacked me on a couple of occasions, one of which she was there was this summer, I think it was my freshman year of high school, right before my freshman year, where she was just gone for days at a time. My younger sister and I wouldn't see her at all. And I had to be 13. My sister was roughly 10. And she would just go to a friend's house and she was never coming home. So one day when she did come home during the day, she mentioned something about doing the dishes or something. And I got snarky. I said, well, come home and do them yourself, which is not the smartest thing. But I was so angry and I was so confused as to why she just left us. And when she was home, she wasn't the woman we knew. She verbally and physically hated us. And she attacked me. She grabbed me around the throat and she threw me against the glass wall, separating the backyard from the house. And my younger sister grabbed a giant horticultural book off the shelf and hit her over the back with it until she released me. Through that time period, which the abuse went on for several years. During that time, I would keep running away with my sister. I would take her and we'd go to my dad's house, and he lived about 3 or 4 miles away. But he kept bringing us back because he wanted us to have a relationship with our mother. And he couldn't quite grasp how bad it had gotten and how she could be that different. Yes, they had had issues, but it never really gotten to that level. But like I said, it was like she just stopped fighting against whatever it was that she was dealing with. For me, the biggest trauma was trying to understand what I had done. what I had done to deserve this woman who was now such a central part of my life. How could I get her back? Was it something that I could change? Was it something that I could fix? Was I a bad kid for not wanting to live with my mother anymore? So it took me several years to really sever completely the relationship with her, which is what I ended up doing, no longer taking her phone calls, no longer speaking to her. And we haven't had a relationship now for 30 years. That event led to an incredible amount of depression for me through my high school years. I would go to class, I would play sports, and I would sleep. And that was all I wanted to do until like the end of my junior year. I started to kind of come out of it. But I did not want to live. I would sleep with a knife under my pillow just to remind myself that I could stop this if I really wanted to. And while I never attempted to hurt myself. I was punishing myself emotionally by not connecting with people, I had nobody to talk to that this was happening. I was trying to protect my younger sister. My father didn't really understand, and he was dating and doing his own thing at that time. It felt completely overwhelming. When I went into the military and really dove into that no emotion zone of life, that I think that's when I realized how much I'd closed myself off. I transitioned out of the military and I was just throwing myself 100% into work. I have friends, but I'd meet people where they are. I would never give myself completely to anybody. And when I got out of the military, I crashed. I hit a wall, emotionally, physically, mentally, financially. I realized I was broken and I didn't even know where to begin to look. So when I went to that Edgar Cayce retreat that I talk about in another episode, one of the first meditations that this woman, Judith Pendleton, first one I've ever heard lead a meditation, she led us on a meditation to look inside the body to see if there's anything that needed healing. And I saw my heart. And I saw that it was ripped in two pieces, separate, physically separated in my body with just all these jagged edges. And she talked about surrounding that area with light and bringing what you needed to heal it. And I saw myself taking a string of light and literally sewing the two halves of my heart back together. And the whole time I'm doing this in the meditation, I am weeping. And then she asks, what caused this trauma? And all the years of that relationship with my mother came back like a god awful Netflix series just playing through my mind. And I realized that I had ripped myself in two and not dealt with it at all. I was walking around severely wounded from that event, and I had learned to just kind of put my head down and get through it. The sleeping for 3 years is what it felt like, was just trying to survive because the wound was so bad and I was in so much pain and it was hemorrhaging that even my body knew it just had to shut down. It couldn't handle it. So when I grew up and I came out of that, I didn't deal with it. I shoved it as far down as I could, shut down the emotions, went into straight logic brain, which the military loves, and I was successful enough doing that I felt like I was doing the right thing for my life until I crashed. And that forced me to go back into an incredibly painful trauma that I went through and deal with it. And when I say deal with it, I mean opening that emotional floodgate back up and not hiding from myself. It's introspection, true introspection, being willing and able to go in and say, okay, this is an event that happened. Here is how I reacted. Here is how I'm reacting now. I'm still allowing myself to feel this pain from, at the time, I think it was maybe 10 or 15 years in the past. I'm still feeling that pain like it's happening in this moment. I'm still holding on to that childhood confusion, that feeling of why couldn't she love me enough to stop drinking? That one tortured me for a very long time until I stopped thinking about it. So now I have to go back in and I have to think about it. And I had to look at those events at first as a wounded young adult. I'm opening these wounds back up. I'm looking at them and feeling the emotion again. But it does get to a point as you're looking at these events, as you're really allowing yourself to feel the emotions that we often don't allow ourselves to feel in that time of trauma. I allowed myself to feel them so that I could start looking at the event without the emotional reaction. So I wasn't blinded by my fear and my pain and my anger anymore. I did past life regressions. I did life between life regressions. I did all of this work on this one traumatic event in my life to figure out what lessons I needed to learn from that. Why did I build that into my lesson plan? Why did I have that trauma exam? And how did I react after the exam? So the lesson of losing a parent to alcoholism and drugs and mental illness was an incredibly powerful one. I was given the opportunity to learn compassion. I read the AA book to better understand alcoholism and come to terms with the chemical reactions that people have, especially if they already have medication that they take or they're suffering from mental illness. I was giving myself the opportunity to look at my mother, who I still have no relationship with physically because she's still in that cycle. But I was able to look at her soul as a sovereign soul. She is a perfect, energetic being, just like me. We came down here to have a human experience, and we agreed to play these roles for each other. There were rights and lefts that we could have taken at any given point. But looking back, she is the epitome of a soul that I had to recognize as a sovereign soul. It's not about forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't even really a thing when you look at it from that level, because I'm a soul and she's a soul. There's nothing to forgive. This is a human experience. We agreed to do these things with each other. In fact, I'm grateful for the experience because I did learn to be a very self-sufficient woman. I learned how much of a protector I really was by protecting my younger sister, by trying to keep her out of that relationship. I learned that I could pull myself out of toxic relationships. I would never in my life face that level of abuse from someone I loved again, not even close. I was able to see what conditional love looked like and recognize that that's not who I wanted to be. That's not how I wanted to be. I gave myself, with that trauma exam, the opportunity to wake up. And it did wake me up. It woke me up to the fact that my life as I was living it up to that point was not all that there was for me. It was a fraction of who I was meant to be. I had shut down so many different receptors to deal with that pain instead of because I was afraid. So when I stopped being afraid and I stopped allowing the emotion from 15 years ago affect me in the present, I can now look back and say, thank God that that happened. I gained so many skills that I still look on with pride, resourcefulness, compassion, leadership, analytical abilities to see what was going on in her life that led to that. It wasn't just my story that was happening, it's her story that's happening in her own journey. So I was able to pull myself out of that experience and say, what could she have been facing at that time? Was she possibly doing the best that she could with where she was on her journey? Her journey was traumatic and painful, like everybody else's. She decided to react to it with alcohol and drugs. I was given the opportunity to deal with trauma because of her choice and choose how I wanted to become, how I wanted to see her, how I wanted to see myself and see my father's soul and my sister's soul and all of these other integrated entities in this one beautiful trauma exam gave me the chance to learn so many soul lessons that I still value and use to this day, but I had to recognize them as lessons. And it starts by recognizing that you're still in pain, by recognizing that trauma is still living in your body. If you can feel the trauma when you think of the event, or when you smell something that was in the air when that event happened, or when a song comes on, you remember it playing in the background of your trauma. If those things trigger physical pain, you are holding on to that trauma like it's a teddy bear, like it's a broken heart that you have just done your damnedest to ignore. But by recognizing that it was broken, recognizing that was not how I wanted to feel, I didn't want to feel triggered every time I saw a mother and a daughter on a commercial. And I have cried at my fair share of mothers and daughters on commercials. The scene from You've Got Mail when she's dancing with her mother in the bookstore. Holy crap. That one got me for years. The power that we have to deal with our trauma is endless.